On today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, part 2 of Nick Caserio's press conference, we break it all down. Should we be concerned that the Houston Texans may not draft a receiver early on because they feel like they got the guy already here? And we look at pro days and combines. Is there a difference? If so, what is it?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Better Red Nation, Bulls on Parade, the Friday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast. And that is what you are listening to. I'm your Texas Credential Media member, John Hickman, alongside the man with the big hat and the even bigger smile, Brian Big Sarge Barfield. Listen, guys, thank you for making this your first listen of this Good Friday. Okay. Yeah. And in 6 days, the Texans will rise to the podium. But thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Yesterday, we talked about the offensive line investments. Today, we'll talk about the running back investments. We'll also look at the inside-outside advantages. Sarge, what's that? Well, that's looking at if it matters if a receiver is a slot coming out of college. It's all about where you can find the opportunities to get him the ball. But will that lead to Houston kind of neglecting the wide receiver position early in the draft? We kick off today's show looking at the differences in days. Does it provide any different context, for the Texans front office, the scouting department, and Nick Caserio? Big Sarge.
Greetings and salutations, John Hickman.
Super excited about today's show. Very excited about this first segment because you had an opportunity to ask Nick Caserio about the difference in pro days and combines. Let's dive into that.
How much does the pro day change for you all than it does from when you all are at the combine, when you're evaluating these players? And how important was it to lock up players like Derek Stingley Jr. and Jalen Petrie?
Yeah, I'd say the whole pro day kind of combine process, it's a little bit different. I'd say the combine, the big thing is you got 300 or so players there, and, you know, the drills are the drills, right? Sometimes at a pro day, they might be able to do something a little bit different from a drill, or the coach can maybe have a little bit more involvement. You can actually ask them, hey, try this technique or see how they respond to this technique. You know, if you have a group of players on a defensive line, you might have 10 defensive line coaches there. Now, we're not going to do 10 different drills, but maybe there's certain things that you're trying to look for to see how they handle, how they respond. Combine's a little bit more controlled. It's a little more fixed. I mean, everybody's kind of – but, look, the combine's a combine. I'd say the biggest thing with the combine is just kind of getting the data point. Okay, here's the information. Here's their height, their weight, their speed, their jump, just so you can put it into the system. And if they don't do it to the combine, then they got to do the pro day. Then you can see it. And then, say, the pro day workout, everybody kind of uses them a little bit differently. I'd say, from our perspective, it's more kind of some of it's geographic. Okay, we have the opportunity to get down there to Austin, and you can kind of see grouping of players. You're not necessarily going just for one player, but in Texas' case, I mean, they got 500 kids that are going to get drafted this year. So I mean, it's good to see them all kind of in one spot. So I'd say every situation is going to be a little bit different, but I'd say the pro day you might be able to focus on something a little bit more specific relative to a drill. Maybe, well, this is what it looks like on tape, and then you actually see it live, and, okay, maybe it pops one way or the other. Well, you know what? Okay, that's the benefit. It doesn't necessarily all of a sudden drastically change your evaluation. It's really another data point. So when you think about how many touch points we have, I mean, you're probably talking about dozens from beginning to end with the pro day, combine, workout, being a part of that. So,
John, one of the reasons why I wanted to ask Nick Caserio that question is because I wanted the fans to be able to hear him talk about the difference in those two things. You look at it as a lot of people get themselves caught up in what happens at the combine, and they look at, and like I like to call it the underwear Olympics, but they get themselves caught up in the underwear Olympics and how many reps how many reps of 225 was this young man able to do? What was his broad jump? What was his shoulder run? What was his 40 time? And, you look at that and everybody's watching. And so everybody's watching that. But just like Nick Caserio said, it's a controlled environment. So meaning that everybody who is actually there as far as the teams are concerned, they don't have that hands-on process because the NFL has selected certain people to be able to run these different types of drills. And so those teams, the biggest thing at the combine is that the fact that the teams get a chance and an opportunity to talk to the players and interview them and to be able to sit down. One of the things that I love that DeMeco Ryan said when we were at the NFL draft combine this year was, I get an opportunity to look at these young men in their eyes. I get a chance to see their personalities, because the one thing that we don't want them to do is we don't want them to walk in there and we don't want them to be stiff. We don't want them to not be themselves, because we can't get an accurate depiction if we know that your answer is already going to be scripted on what we ask you. And so, like I said, you look at the combine, you look at the interviews, and then like what Nick said, the data points. Because a lot of times at the combine, a lot of these players are nothing but numbers on a sheet. Like, of course, as a team, your scouting department has went out and they know who they're looking at, what they're looking at. But for some GMs and coaches, this is their first time actually getting a chance to see this player up front. And so a defensive tackle may walk into the room that's listed as 6'5", right? And now you look at him, he's like, hey, that young man isn't 6'5", that young man is 6'3.5", right? They said he had this type of wingspan. That young man don't have that type of wingspan, but you only get that short limited amount of time while he's in that room and while you're watching him on the field. Now, when you get to the pro day, it's more of hands-on. He said, Nick said that the familiarity, right? I said the comfortability, the comfortability and the familiarity of being at the pro day, him being able to be more hands-on, him be able to talk to the coaches. So if he's looking at a wide receiver, he's talking to the wide receivers coach and saying, okay, can we see this wide receiver run this specific route? And Nick Cayley may have said, hey, we're looking for wide receivers who can do this, and we're looking for wide receivers who can do that. And so now when Nick Caserio's there, when DeMeco Ryans is there, they can say, hey, we want to see this. Or if they're looking at an interior offensive lineman, all right, look, can you all do this so we can see this? And it's not just, we're not just talking about the Texans. We're talking about a lot of other teams who are looking for the same position and have the same need. Now, the interesting thing to me was he said the University of Texas, John, and you and I have been talking about the University of Texas and their prospects. And, of course, Nick Caserio doesn't have 500 of them coming out. But the thing that stood out to me when he said the University of Texas, it took me back to 2 years ago. I remember seeing Nick Caserio and Frank Ross over at the University of Houston's pro day. And after talking to Tank at the draft combine and them interviewing him, talking to him, I think that they got an opportunity to see just a little bit more of what he could do when he's familiar with, catching passes from his own quarterback, being familiar in his own practice bubble. Now you get an up and close and personal on what he can do on the special teams. And so when he started to answer the question, what stood out to me was, okay, so University of Texas. Yeah, I remember when you was at the University of Houston, you took a play out of the University of Houston in the third round.
Are we going to see the same thing? For me, and I love that question, because honestly, it does give a deeper insight to the process in which teams go about drafting players or even considering drafting players. And I think for Houston, it's a way to get a closer look at the player personality, how they go and fight against adversity. You may have seen that player at the combine, but as you mentioned, all things considered, it isn't a sense of normalcy for them. It's a lot of change. They are in Indianapolis. They are not, in his case, in Nick Caserio's case, in Austin, or Tank Dell in Houston, or for Will Anderson, Alabama, C.J. Stroud, Ohio State. They are in different environments. And so now when you come back to the pro day, how did you respond to that adversity? And I love that. Again, checking out their personality, getting an opportunity to get some more one-on-ones, figuring out what are their specified strengths, and if they fit with the team, you get more of a insider look at that. I'm a bigger fan of pro days compared to combines. I love that the combine is before the pro day, and pro days really do help teams get an opportunity to figure out, okay, man, do we really want to pick this guy?
Yeah.
Now we were getting much more of a hands-on look and approach with him. And Nick Caserio even mentioned, try technique out. So you're getting that personal time with that player. You're getting more of a one-on-one time, and then you get that opportunity to see how that player responds. Now, there's no way around it. At all of these pro days, whether it's UT with Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond, or whether it's Emeka Ibuka, it doesn't matter. Houston needs to bring in a wide receiver in the 2025 draft. But Sarge, we talked and we figured, hey, maybe it may not be as early as we expect it to be. So we'll dive into that when we come back.
Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives business flexibility by connecting them with two freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day with multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Visit upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's upwork.com, upwork.com to connect with talent and grow your business today.
Yeah, good question, Landry. I would say, honestly, when you look at kind of formationing and some of the things that you're able to do from an alignment standpoint, I mean, guys essentially line up all over the place. So even if they're quote unquote inside the formation players, I mean, everybody's an inside the formation player. When you reduce a split, when you have tight receivers tight their formation, all right, line up players outside the formation. I would say going back to Kirk, at A&M, like he played inside the formation. But I would say when you look at his career, I mean, he's pretty much played all over the formation. I mean, let's go back to Arizona. I mean, this guy played all over the place. So you need players that maybe have some degree of flexibility. So if a guy can play inside the formation, outside the formation, all right, not everybody can do that, but some can. You can do some things formationally to kind of help the players. There's some players that are better served on the perimeter. Try to keep him on a perimeter. If he's an inside-only player, okay, well, then he's an inside-only player. Like Amendola, I would say, was an inside-only player. I would say Edelman wasn't an inside-only player. Like Edelman was able to be a multi-purpose player, plenty of snaps to him on a perimeter. So it goes back to the same thing. What does a player do well? How do you deploy him? What can you do formationally to help him? What can you do to give him free access? What can you do to help him against the matchup one-on-one, whatever it is? So, I mean, we'll look at everything. But, again, you need three or four receivers that are going to be able to do multiple things. Unless they do something really, really well, you want to just put them over there and say, okay, like leave him on his own, and then we can handle the rest of the formation with these other guys over here. So, I mean, Gronkowski was a quote-unquote tight end. But, I mean, there's plenty of times that he was singled on the perimeter formation. I mean, Rob's going to the Hall of Fame, so we're talking about one of the best tight ends ever. But, so a lot of it is you can kind of manipulate the defense however you need to based on the personnel that you have.
Welcome back in, Locked On Texas listeners and viewers. That was Landry Locker's question to General Manager Nick Caserio, asking him about the slot position and if that will determine whether or not Houston targets one in the 2025 draft. Really enjoyed that question. I want to give you guys some context. In 2023, the slot receivers were targeted on 30% of all pass attempts with 67% with a 67% catch rate. This is the beauty of modern offenses, right? This isn't about limitations. There isn't going to be a lot of limitations in place on what a receiver can and can't do. Did Caserio leave you believing that their slot guy is on the roster and the belief in Nick Caley's offense is high enough to where the usage and formations and the motions will be good enough to where Houston shouldn't target a top receiver high in the draft, Sarge? And before I give it to you, I do want to say we got to give credit where credit is due to Nick Caserio, because I believe that he mentioned the words like flexibility, and where you line up a player speaks directly to the presumed flexibility from Nick Caley's offense that we are excited to see. But did his response leave you in a place of where, or maybe Houston won't target a top receiver in that first round? Maybe they won't jeopardize later round picks to trade up for Matthew Golden, who I think will be perfect for this team. Or maybe they'll just bank on guys later in the draft.
John, Nick Caserio is so unpredictable. I'm just going to be honest with you. He is so unpredictable. And you never, unless he tells you the complete angle, he'll always leave you in that 50-50 range. Hey, man, Hey, 50% that we could jump up and we can take a top talent at wide receiver, give up some future draft capital and take this wide receiver that we want. Or, there's a possibility we may not draft a wide receiver to the 5th round. They got a 5th round pick, right? They don't have a 4th and a 6th, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
No 4th, no fifth.
No 4th and no 6th.
They got 2 thirds and they got 2 7ths as of right now.
So, right. And now, also, you could be like, he could trade back and then say he could be targeting a wide receiver that he thinks that he can get in the 2nd round and he could gain some picks. And he, knowing him, he'll just say, you know what? We don't want this pick. We'll just trade back because there's another wide receiver that we're thinking about getting. John, I'm going to be honest with you. There's a possibility that the Houston Texans there's a possibility they may not take a wide receiver to the 7th round. That could be a possibility. If they trade back,
that would be the day I come on this show and say, Sarge, just let me have the segment.
But John, listen, and I'm only saying the 7th because I mean, like we said, they don't have a 4th, they don't have a 6th. Now, if they're able to get a 4th, they may draft one in the 4th round. There's a possibility, John, that they don't take a wide receiver early because you and I talked about this on Thursday show. Hey man, they know that they're getting Tank back. Why are we going to waste a high draft pick on this? And I know there's a lot of uncertainties about how Tank Dell is going to return once he's back because we've watched him in his first 2 seasons in the NFL with the injury. And one injury, he injured himself his rookie season. And then in his sophomore season, that injury, he injured himself in a more gruesome type way, something that's going to take him longer to heal than what happened to him in his rookie year. But they may be totally fine going into the season with Braxton Berrios because he can play in the slot and putting Christian Kirk on the outside. They may be comfortable with having John Mechie there, and they may be comfortable enough with having Xavier Hutchinson, excuse me, and Justin Watson, if I'm not mistaken, that they got from Kansas City, correct?
Not good enough.
They may be comfortable saying that we got this, and let's just take a wide receiver in the later round so we can have depth and let's develop our own talent. That could happen, John. That's all I'm saying is that
not good enough.
And so when you asking him about is he going to take a player that can play just strictly slot or strictly outside or both, in Nick Caserio's mind, remember now during this same press conference, he said we're going to draft some players that may not make this team. We're going to draft some players that may not get a lot of playing time. So if that's the case, if you're going to look at developing, then you may not take a wide receiver so early because you want to see if Nick Caserio can, if will the Los Angeles Ram affect like it had on Puka Nacua. Maybe they already have their Puka Nacua and Xavier Hutchinson. And I'm just saying that before you fans and viewers and listeners start trying to say Sarge said that Xavier Hutchinson is Puka Nacua. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that Landry asked a great question.
Very good
Nick
question.
gave him a great corporate response.
It's not good enough, Sarge. And I think it would be absolute malpractice if they did not address the wide receiver position with one of their first 2 picks. This is just me. Excuse me. Texas late round receivers since Nick Caserio has taken over. Are we going to consider the 3rd round late round? That's mid round, right?
Yeah.
So we can't include Nico Collins, who they traded him for. We can't include Tank Dell, who they traded him for. The only receiver, Xavier Hutchinson. And other receivers taken by Nick Caserio, only 2 of the 4 have worked out in those late rounds. That's Nico Collins and Tank Dell. Nick Caserio has also, and I do want to add this, neglected adding receivers. Like last year, they didn't draft a receiver. That was malpractice. Nick has never drafted a receiver in the 1st round. No matter how we look at the system and the belief the opportunities will open up, I think it would be irresponsible for Nick to not address the wide receiver position with the first 2 picks. The justification can be made for O-line first, and I get that. We've talked about replacing the anchor. Listen, Laremy Thompson was one of the more talented players on this roster, if not the most talented player on the offensive side of the ball. You want to replace him, I can completely get behind it, right? But you don't allow Nico Collins to restructure his contract and help you out and not go about the offseason and say, we're going to find you help on the opposite side, right? You brought in Christian Kirk, and to Nick Caserio's point, he's played all over the place.
Yeah.
Well, we talked to some Jacksonville Jaguar fans, not fans. We talked to some Jacksonville Jaguars insiders. And the same thing they said about Cam Robinson, you want to leave him at left tackle, you want to leave Christian Kirk inside. So what he did in Arizona, that don't matter no more. What have you done for me lately? But for the Houston Texans to get over the hump, the realization is, yes, Hutch and Metch could absolutely benefit from a new play caller. They could turn it around, but that room is still talent deficient, and it needs upgrades as it is currently put together. And with all this competition talk with the offensive line, meaningful competition should be the goal. The last two playoff appearances, it's been Nico out there.
Yeah.
The last 2 seasons, excuse me.
But
and it would be pure negligence to not get a top prospect in the building to add to this receiver room. And honestly, I think it would be borderline unacceptable to not draft one with one of those 7th round picks. So one early and one late. Houston cannot continue to live off of this because they're going to get the same results. And I think if we look at what the Baltimore Ravens have been going through, right, you're going to get those same results.
Preach.
That's it. It's. I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear what the possibilities. And a drafted player is all possibilities, right? But Mechie and Hutchinson, we love them, right? They haven't panned out to this point, so you can't go based off the past.
Yeah.
Justin Watson is not a guy you want to lean on. Braxton Berrios could very well be a key factor for this team. But in no other place in the NFL has he been a key factor. Getting over the hump means getting key factors, and you have to do that in a draft because Houston neglected to do it in free agency.
So, John, let me say this, right? Let me say this, and
can we bring it back on the other side when we come back?
We surely, we definitely can. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With the Wi-Fi 6/6E and auto low latency mode, advanced technology, Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speeds you need to stay competitive. With 4K streaming with more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribe services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allow you to take your games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com, Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Games Pass, unlimited subscriptions, and compatible controllers required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen.
Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Listen, thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, find Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on Locked On NFL Draft. Go inside the Locked On War Room for all 32 picks in this ultimate 7-episode series. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on Locked On NFL's Draft YouTube page and wherever you get your podcast. Before we went to the break, Big Sarge, you had a rebuttal. Let's hear it.
John, listen. So one thing that we noticed last season was CJ got hit a ton of times, right? He got hit a lot to the point where at the beginning of the, during the first part of the season, he was shell shocked. So I know that we haven't even had the 2025 draft yet, the NFL draft just yet, and I'm already want to jump to the 2026 draft because I need to do my research, and I may have this. I'm going to look this up over the weekend, and hopefully have it for you all leading into next week because I need to see the 2026 wide receivers that are coming out. Because if you take what you have right now, and then you say, all right, what we want to do is make sure that we protect CJ. So what if they take 2 offensive linemen in the first 2 picks, John, and then address the wide receiver issue? I'm sorry, not the wide receiver issue, the wide receiver 2 issue later on. Maybe that could be actually addressed in 2026, but then you still get some of these late round wide receivers to come in and compete for an opportunity to get some playing time, or you just develop the talent that you have on the team, but you go out and you're getting those 2 offensive linemen to protect CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I mean, they had the competition last year and they neglected to draft a receiver.
Yeah,
and so I know you're mentioning, bringing in, right. You're mentioning get draft a receiver late to add to the competition, but the competition is great, right?
Yeah,
competition is great, but really it's only good when it means something.
Yeah,
when you know it's something impactful and meaningful coming from it. Case in point, listen, man, how many times do we watch players in the last 5 minutes of a blowout drop 12 points and the game ends still in a 20-point blowout? Yeah, I mean, that was cool for you, but what did that do for the team? How many times have we seen teams go out there and the game is put away, but hey, listen, man, I just ran a touchdown there because nobody stopped me. So when you have these conversations about competition, I'm all for it, guys. I really am. But you want to make sure that at the end of the road, the expectation of we're getting the best guy to help us get over the hump in whatever area that is, you at least have the best guy in the room.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying, man. And I thought it was irresponsible for Houston not to draft a receiver last year based off of what we saw from Mechie the year before and Hutchinson the year before, right? And I think it will be irresponsible for Houston to not look at what Joe Burrow has, to not look at what helped Patrick Mahomes be so great, to not look at what allowed Matthew Stafford to kick his career off and sustain his career in LA. Giving your quarterback weapons matters.
I've been saying that, John. Jump up in the draft and take one of those really good wide receivers early. John, you know who's to blame for all this, right?
Who you got?
Deontay Johnson.
Let's move on. We talking about these receivers now. Let's hear from Nick Caserio in regards to the running back position.
Yeah, I mean, similar to the receiver question. I mean, there's a good group of backs. So, I mean, this goes back to the same thing. We'll stack the board. We'll look at what our options are, look at supply and demand. What are you passing up in lieu of something else? So that's pretty good room. We feel like we got, pretty good cohort of players in that group. I mean, Mixon, I think he went to the Pro Bowl last year, so he's a good football player. I mean, DP was one of the top kickoff returners, and when he's played offensively, he's done a pretty good job with his opportunities. Say Dare's his role is kind of specific to the kicking game, so there's an opportunity for us to add a player that we think can help our team. We'll look at it. If we don't, then we'll go with whatever group. And again, like everybody's focused on a draft, but there's other opportunities to add players to your team, which, I mean, we've done that. I would say let's go back to 2023. Like 4 of the starters on the offensive line the first 4 weeks, weren't here until August. So, that was we were forced to do that because of injuries and some other things that took place. So, again, there's not one way to add players to the team. We're always going to look at multiple avenues and try to take advantage of the opportunities and make good decisions, which we've, hopefully shown the ability to do on a yearly basis.
That was Nick Caserio talking about the running back position. I really wonder how he views, because we know this is a great draft class for running backs.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how he views the life of Joe Mixon and how long Joe can sustain playing at a high level.
Yeah.
Because I can understand if he makes the case that, well, we got Joe Mixon again. He just pointed out Pro Bowler last year. And if that offensive line is 5% better, we're looking at an even better Joe Mixon. I mean, Joe Mixon was hitting the backfield a lot last year. We talk about C.J. Stroud hitting a lot in the backfield. Joe Mixon was always hit either at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage just as much as C.J. Stroud. So, like, he may view Joe as a long-term solution, but it feels like this is still a perfect draft to get a little bit greedy and look at some of these young running backs and say, man, you have all the talent in the world. We can use you in spurts. We can also shelve you to the side. And so whenever we're ready, you're a guy that can really pick up where Joe Mixon leads off.
And John, this is what. So one thing you and I have been talking about this whole time throughout this whole draft process is, do the Texans have enough picks to fill their needs? Do the Texans have enough draft capital to fulfill their needs? Or do they find some type of way to get more draft capital? Because look, we've talked about, we know they need offensive linemen. We've talked about that on numerous occasions. We know that they need wide receivers. And now we're talking about the backup running back position. And I don't think that the 2026 running back draft class is going to be as, talent laden as the one that you have in 2025. But when you look at that, now you're saying to yourself, okay, but I know we need offensive linemen. I know that we need wide receivers. We also talked about, okay, are they going to draft a player for the future for when they lose Danielle Hunter? Hey, who's backing up Stingley? Who's backing up Kamari? So, like, they have a lot of things, a lot of holes that need to be filled, not glaring holes, so much after you get past those two offensive positions. But now, just like what we're talking about right now, running back investments. Joe Mixon ain't going to be there forever. And if you get somebody in there right now, now you're putting yourself into a situation where you do have a backup plan for Joe Mixon. But okay, John, they draft, let's just say they draft a offensive lineman in the first round. Then they take a wide receiver in the second round. Then they got 2 third-round picks, if I'm not mistaken? 2 picks in the third round. Like, now you're looking at yourself saying, do we need to get another offensive lineman? Do we need to get a wide receiver? Or is that the point where you say, okay, we're going to go and we're going to get a running back? All right, so are you getting someone? Are you getting the best player available? Or are you drafting for need? So
I think the running back position, we're going to see an early spurt. And then I think we're going to see a cutoff. And I think we're going to see some talent in between 4 and 5 and 6, honestly, that could come in and benefit from being behind Joe Mixon, being behind Damian Pierce, by the way, who thank God Nick Caserio shouted him out and mentioned his special team ability. That plays a huge role.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see like it get a little active early in the draft for running backs. It's going to pause and then it'll pick back up. And I think once it picks back up, it'll be some talent. I do want to add where we may need to look at where Houston may view the tight ends and the running backs.
Yeah.
They got 3 capable tight ends. How many capable future running backs do they have? Joe Mixon is out of the contract after 2026.
Okay, so now do we look at British Brooks and see what we have for him? Do we look at Jawar Jordan? Do we look and see how we could develop him? I mean, a running back who can run and catch out of the backfield. And you got the bruising back in British Brooks. And so, just like I said with the wide receiver position, they may think that they already have that, or maybe could get something like that when after training camp is done, when some of these running backs start to get cut, because some of these teams can't afford to keep that amount of running backs. And so they may not even draft a running back. But if you do draft a running back, John, like, now you're looking at, when am I going to do it? You don't have a 4th pick and you don't have a 6th pick. Now, if this 5th pick, now what are you doing? So either you're going to trade back and get more picks, or you just going to go with what you got and try to fill those needs right there. And, John, we're going to look at some of these. There are going to be some running backs that are going to be drafted, and there's going to be a lot of people that say the Texans could have had that running back that's going to be very good in this league.
Yeah. Caleb Johnson visited Houston last week. Thank you guys for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to your pods.
And make sure you follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Star Sports with the Z at the end. Good Friday to everyone. And for those of you all who do celebrate, happy Easter.
And if you don't, enjoy yourself some fish today, fried hard. Until next time, ladies and gents, peace.